My name is Naomi Lewis. I was born and raised in Barbados. I worked as a receptionist in a hotel, living my normal life, but I never imagined that day would come. I would be lying lifelessly, hovering between this world and the next. It happened on a Friday evening. The sun was setting, casting an orange glow over the ocean as I made my way home from visiting a friend in Bridgetown. I wasn't driving. I sat in the seat, relaxed, listening to the faint sound of waves in the distance. The driver, a man I had known for years, was behind the wheel. Everything seemed normal, until it wasn't. The car picked up speed. The driver's hands tightened around the steering wheel. His foot pressed the brake. Nothing. The pedal sank. The brakes were gone. We were on a downhill road. The car moved faster, the wind roaring past, the lights of oncoming traffic blurring into streaks. Horns blared. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. I gripped the door, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. Then the impact. A sickening crash, metal twisted, glass shattered. My body lurched forward, then slammed back. Pain shot through my ribs. My head snapped to the side, and the world turned dark. I heard voices, distant, frantic. People shouting, footsteps rushing toward us. Hands pulled at me, trying to lift me. A woman's voice trembled as she was calling out to me, telling me to stay with her. Someone pressed on my chest, counting, pushing, begging me to breathe. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. The world around me felt heavy, fading away like a dream. At that point, I was dying. They took me to the hospital. The bright lights flashed in and out of focus. I saw doctors moving quickly, their voices muffled and urgent. The cold touch of medical instruments pressed against my skin. My vision blurred. My chest felt tight. Then everything stopped. The voices disappeared. The beeping machines fell silent. A strange stillness filled the room. I looked down. I saw myself lying on the hospital bed, lifeless. My skin was pale, my lips slightly parted, my arms limp at my sides. The heart monitor was flat. A long, steady beep echoed in the room. I was dead. But I was still there, not in my body, but watching. Floating. Separate. A force pulled me away, as if something unseen had reached out and taken hold of me. The walls of the hospital room melted away. The machines, the doctors, the entire world I had known, gone. I was in a different place. A place I never imagined I would be.
Before we begin this miraculous revelation, take a moment to like this video. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments, and subscribe if you haven't already. Someone needs to hear this message today, and by sharing it, you could be the reason they do. What you're about to hear is not just a testimony, it's a warning, a first-hand account of what happens when this life ends. If you think you have time to get right with God, you need to listen carefully. Now, let's begin.
At first, I didn't understand what had happened. The last thing I remembered was the crash, the feeling of weightlessness as the car spun out of control, the impact, the cold, lifeless stillness in the hospital. Then, suddenly, I was somewhere else. It was not like waking up. It was not like a dream. It was real. More real than anything I had ever known. I stood in an empty space, yet it was not empty. There was no ground beneath my feet, but I was not falling. The air was thick, not with warmth, not with cold, but with something else. A presence. I turned my head, and there, ahead of me, was a shadow. My mind was still frozen in the shock of my death. I had no breath, no heartbeat, but I felt. A strange silence filled me. No cars, no hospital machines, no voices. Only him. At first, I could not see his face. I tried to move closer, but I didn't have legs. I wasn't walking. Yet the distance between us became smaller, and as it did, the shape before me changed. Then, I saw him. A man. Dressed in white, standing tall. There was light around him, but it was not the kind of light that hurt the eyes. It didn't shine on him. It seemed to come from him. His presence filled the space, as if everything that existed was held together by him. I knew who he was before my mind could fully accept it. Jesus. I had heard his name all my life, prayed to him, believed in him. But standing there, I realized I had never truly understood. I stared at him, still reeling from what had happened to me. The accident, the moment my body failed, the moment I left it, the fact that I had died, and yet I was here, in front of him. I wanted to speak, but I had no mouth, I had no voice. Yet he heard me. I don't know how, but he did. His eyes met mine, and in that instant, something in me broke. It wasn't sadness, it wasn't fear, it was everything. Every thought I had ever had, every doubt, every regret. Every moment I had wasted, every time I had chosen selfishness over love, every sin I had buried deep inside me, pretending it was too small to matter. He saw it all. And still, he looked at me. I don't have words for what I saw in his eyes. They held power, but they also held something far greater. They held mercy. In that moment, I understood. I had spent my life believing I knew who Jesus was, but nothing could have prepared me for this. I was standing before the one who knew me better than I knew myself, and I could not hide from him. I was standing before him, stripped of everything I thought I knew. And then, he showed me. It wasn't with words, it wasn't a voice in my ears. It was something deeper. A truth poured into me all at once, like a flood. I saw the world as it truly was. And I saw Valentine's Day. I had never questioned it before. It was a day of love, wasn't it? A day for affection, for romance, for giving and receiving. That was all it had ever been to me. But now I saw. The world wrapped it in flowers, in chocolates, in soft words. But beneath it, beneath the candles and the gifts, there was something else. It was not a day of love. It was a day of deception. I watched as people filled their hearts with temporary joy, chasing a feeling that would vanish by morning. I saw lust parading as love, desires disguised as devotion. I saw hands reaching for each other, not out of pure affection, but out of emptiness, out of the fear of being alone. And in the midst of it, something darker. The roots of the day were deep, older than most knew. I saw the shadows of ancient hands, blood spilled in secret, rituals that never truly faded, only changed their disguise. The world had painted over it, buried the truth under bright colors and soft words, but beneath the surface, it still lived. I had never thought to ask, never thought to look past the surface. Now I couldn't unsee it. Jesus did not speak. He didn't have to. His eyes told me everything. Love was not what I had believed it to be. It wasn't a feeling to chase. It wasn't something that faded when the night was over. It wasn't selfish. It wasn't about taking. It wasn't about temporary pleasure. It was something holy, something pure. And what the world celebrated on that day was not it. A weight settled in me. A fear, not of him, but of the truth. Of how blind I had been. Of how blind everyone was. The day wasn't innocent. It wasn't harmless. It was a shadow, wearing the mask of light. I thought I understood life. I thought I understood death. But as I stood before him, stripped of my body, stripped of all the excuses I used to tell myself, I felt what I had never felt before. Truth pressing against my soul, heavier than any weight I had ever carried. I had spent my life making choices. Some small, some big. Some I had forgotten the next day, some I had laughed about. But none of them were gone. They clung to me. Every word, every thought, every action, I wore them. And the ones I had dismissed, the ones I had called harmless, were the ones that burned the most. I had never thought about the spiritual weight of what I celebrated. I had never stopped to ask what I was agreeing to. But now, I saw it. Valentine's Day had seemed so innocent. A day for love, a day for gifts, a day to follow along with everyone else. But in that place, standing before the one who sees everything, I understood. The world wasn't what it seemed. There were rules, laws, written into the very fabric of existence. And when I had joined in without thinking, I had stepped onto a path I didn't even know existed. Love wasn't what I had believed it to be. I had thought it was about feelings, about wanting someone, about being wanted. But in that moment, I saw how the world had twisted it, how the real meaning had been buried, replaced by something shallow. I had traded something eternal for something that faded overnight, and the weight of that choice clung to me. I wanted to pull it off. I wanted to rip it away. But it was part of me now. Jesus didn't speak, but I felt the sorrow in his gaze. He wasn't angry, he wasn't cruel, but there was something in his eyes that made my soul tremble. Regret. Not his. Mine. Because I had known. A part of me had always known. That small voice, the whisper deep inside, the one I had ignored, brushed aside. It had warned me. I just hadn't wanted to listen. And now, standing before the one who made love, I saw how far I had drifted from it. The world had given me roses. It had given me candles. It had wrapped it all in laughter and soft words. But I had never stopped to ask, where did this come from? What was I really celebrating? And now, I knew. And there, in that terrible silence, I understood something that I had never understood before. There are no small choices. I stood there, waiting, My thoughts raced, but my body was gone. There was nowhere to hide, nowhere to run. Just me and the truth. And then it began. It wasn't like I had imagined. No loud voice. I stood there, waiting. My thoughts raced, but my body was gone. There was nowhere to hide, nowhere to run. Just me and the truth. And then it began. It wasn't like I had imagined. No loud voice, no courtroom, no debate. It was a revealing. Every part of my life, every decision I had made, was brought forward, not in words, not in memories, but in a way I felt. And there was no arguing with it. I saw myself, not as I had seen myself in life, but as I truly was. I saw what I had loved, what I had pursued, what I had ignored. I saw the moments I had called insignificant, a passing thought, a casual word, a joke I had laughed at. They weren't small. They weren't forgotten. They were recorded. I had spent my life chasing the world, trusting its ways, believing what it told me was harmless. But there, in that place, nothing was harmless. I had been warned, through whispers in my spirit, through moments of hesitation, through the feeling in my chest when something wasn't right. I had ignored them all. I had told myself, it's nothing. It's just a holiday. It's just a celebration. But standing before him, I understood. The things I had given my time to, the things I had embraced without question, were not light. They carried weight. They had meaning, and that meaning was against him. I wasn't judged by what I claimed to believe. I was judged by what my actions had aligned with. And they hadn't aligned with him. The weight of that truth crushed me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to beg. I wanted to go back, to change it, to do anything to erase what had already been written. But the time for change was before I arrived here. Now there was only judgment. And then the warning came. I wasn't supposed to stay. I was being sent back. Not because I deserved it, not because I had pleaded for it, but because I had to speak, to tell the ones who still had time. Because the world will not warn you. It will blind you. It will call evil good and good evil. It will dress up lies in soft words, in beautiful colors, in celebrations that seem harmless. And if you do not question it, if you do not stop to ask, you will walk the same path I did, the path that ends here. And once you are here, once you stand before him, there are no second chances. I should have been lost. I should have been swallowed up in the weight of my choices, left to sink into the darkness I had walked toward my entire life. But I was still there, still aware, still waiting. And then I felt it. It was not soft, it was not weak. It was power, so strong, so absolute that I could do nothing but listen. It called me, not with words, but with a force that pulled from somewhere deep inside me, somewhere I had long ignored. I had no defense against it, because it was mercy. And mercy cannot be reasoned with. It is given. It is undeserved. It stands where there should only be judgment. I was being given a way out. Not because I had done anything to earn it, not because I was good, not because I had a single excuse to stand on, but because he still wanted me, not the person I had become, not the empty shell that had filled itself with the world, but the soul I had been meant to be. And then I saw the path. It was narrow. It was nothing like the road I had known in life. There were no distractions, no illusions, no space for anything but truth. It required something of me. I had to let go of everything, of my own ideas, of my own desires, of the life I had built for myself. I had to choose him. I had to choose him completely. No conditions, no hesitation, because the world had never loved me. It had only used me. It had filled my hands with dust and told me I was rich. But standing there, I understood what was real. And for the first time, I wanted it. I wanted him. I wanted the mercy I didn't deserve. And I was given it. I was sent back. Not because I was special, not because I had anything to offer, but because you needed to hear this. There is still time. There is still mercy. But you must choose it. Not later. Not someday. Now. I wasn't supposed to come back. I knew at the moment I stood there. Everything in me had been stripped bare. There was no pretending, no second chances, no explanations. And yet he looked at me. Not with anger, not with rejection, but with sorrow. Because he never wanted this for me. Then he spoke. Not with sound, but with something deeper, something that filled the very air around me. Go back. I couldn't move. I didn't want to. Not after what I had seen, not after what I had felt. But he wasn't asking. Tell them. And then everything changed. The light was gone. The presence that had held me, gone. And I fell. Hard. I gasped awake, choking on air that felt wrong. The weight of my body was crushing. The world was too loud, too dim, too empty. And I saw myself at the hospital. I was back. The room was filled with joy, seeing me alive again. Tears ran down my face before I could stop them. My body ached, but nothing hurt more than knowing what I had left behind. And later on, I heard them talking. The doctors, the voices in the room, the driver, the one I had been in the accident with, hadn't made it. I closed my eyes, because I had made it. I had been given time, a gift that should have been his, a gift I had never deserved, and yet I had it. I was alive. Not for myself, but for you. To tell you that you don't have to wait until it's too late. To tell you that the moment you step out of this life, nothing can be undone. To tell you that the choices you make now are the only ones that will matter in the end. There is a way out, a way forward, a way to mercy. But you have to choose it. Because one day, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, you will take your last breath. And when you do, there will be no more time.
You've heard the truth. You've felt the weight of it. Now what will you do? Don't just leave here unchanged. If this message spoke to you, type, "Lord, have mercy on me" in the comments. If you have a testimony of God's grace, share it. It could strengthen someone who needs it. And if you're still hesitating to subscribe, that's okay. But ask yourself, why? Is it because you're not fully walking with Jesus yet? Is it because something inside you is still resisting the truth? If you love him, don't be ashamed to show it. Subscribe, stand for him, and most of all, choose wisely.